Hello, everybody. Welcome to AstroEdify. We have Bibhu Dev Misra with us again. And last time we discussed a lot of new, exciting things with him, particularly about Yuga cycles. If you have not watched that video, I highly recommend to watch that. And you can see the link of that video in the description. It is also shown in the I button above. You can click on that. There we have discussed many new things with the new sets of approach. And he has done some r- very meaningful, deep, original research, which is in combination with the modern scientific approach as well as with the historical, mythological evidences which we read throughout the world, whether it is the Hindu tradition or the Western civilizations. So there has been a lot of I'll say misconception about the timelines, particularly the yugas which we live in. There are four kind of yugas: Satyug, Dwapar, Treta, Kaliyug, and there has been a lot of speculation going on these days that whether Kaliyug is going to end and what kind of results we can see in the new era, or is this a new age which is going to start now. So all these things which have been discussed there, you can watch that video. A lot of new things have been discussed, and in continuation with that, we are going to talk about a lot of new things today with him. And particularly, like we saw that recently we saw LA fires, and we are also seeing political instability going on, whether it is in America or it is in Russia or it is in the Middle East or in Canada. And these things, they have been already discussed in the previous video. If you see that in that video, I have made several videos on global recession and the spiritual awakening. There also have discussed along with the astrological charts of individual nations, where these events which we are seeing right now, they have been discussed in those videos. I think 2 3 weeks or 1 month ago I have made them, and you will see that these things are starting to happen. And we are going to continue this discussion today to understand that what we can expect in the upcoming timeline, in the upcoming future, and why these things are happening. That is also a big question to us. So welcome, sir. And I appreciate that you again joined with us. And I actually had a lot of questions with you to ask, and it was one video was not enough to discuss. So still, today we are going to talk about new things today. First of all, like you discussed, and I know you told me that you'll see that before Trump gets to be taking the oath, you will see that some big major change is going to happen in America. Some major event is going to happen, and that happened. LA fires happened before that, and I was amazed that yes, he is right. So that was one thing which I remember, uh, and that is why I am quite excited to know that what we can expect in the upcoming future now. So, sir, the stage is yours. You are welcome again. Please share your thoughts.
Well, thanks, Abhijeet, for inviting me. We had a really good discussion the last time.
Hmm.
And yes, we spoke a lot about the kind of changes we can expect to happen in the near future.
Hmm.
And two of the items, as far as natural changes are concerned, was fire and water. The upcoming transitional period is what we know as ekpyresis. The Greeks used to refer to as ekpyresis, which means burning or
Hmm.
conflagration.
Hmm.
So we are going into a period of transition where the cleansing will be done by fire. Fire is going to be a very important factor. And that fire, as we discussed last time, it can be wildfires, it can be fires from explosions and bombs, it can be volcanic eruptions, it can be any kind of fire. And we spoke about this after the discussion was over. And the reason why I told you that something big might happen in the initial days of January itself is because uh, see, the turnover into 2025 happened in 21st December. I mean,
Hmm.
theoretically, the moment you go past the winter solstice, you're into the new year.
Hmm.
So 2025 happened by 21st December.
Hmm.
And there's a saying that the morning shows the day. The
Hmm.
moment you enter into 2025, that's the year of transformation,
Hmm.
you're going to expect some changes right up front.
Hmm.
But obviously, I mean, we can't predict what those changes are going to be. But the time that the fire started in LA, it was really surprising
Hmm.
because this is not the traditional fire season in LA.
No.
The traditional fire season is in autumn. And
Yes.
this was a winter fire, and the kind of devastating effect this fire had, it was beyond the imagination of any person. And so when I was reading about all of this news and I was looking at those images, it's very heart wrenching actually for all those people who went through that suffering, all of the destruction. But this is the kind of things that we can expect going forward. This kind of sudden combustions, sudden disruptive events, which you totally don't expect to happen, and they happen. And the reason is very difficult to pinpoint a specific reason, but we are going into a time of transformation, a
Mm,
time of change, and the cleansing is going to be done by fire. And this has two meanings. One is the external cleansing, which is the destruction of material structures, buildings, and things. The other is the internal cleansing.
mm,
So whenever there's a fire, there's also internal cleansing of our ego, of our egoic blockages.
mm,
So both of them are probably happening in tandem. We don't see the internal cleansing; it is not externally visible, but maybe the energies which are now coming in, they're also helping in cleansing our internal egoic systems, which we have built and developed and nurtured over the Kaliyuga.
mm,
So both of them are probably now happening in tandem. So yeah, I mean, the fires are a very good indication that all of these changes that we are talking about has probably already started.
mm. Yes, sir. And if you see that, like you mentioned, that we are going to enter the period of transition, there are two actual period of 1200-year transition. One is the ekpyrosis, which we are going to enter now. It is the change through fire, like you said. And second, the other was through wind, through water. So I we are witnessing that, and I think we can count the climate shift also into it, because of the hot temperatures and glaciers melting down and water level rising. It has already been discussed in Puranas also. And not only that, we have accounts of this in various mythological literatures of various traditions across the globe. So I think that we are entering into those phases, and all of a sudden, like you said, that if something is happening out of its nature, like this fire is not breaking out in autumn, it is happening in winter, and it is not the season, and it is of really big scale. It's not that small, which people used to think, okay, it happens every year and we are fine. It is of a very huge scale. It burned down many houses, many, because the area where it happened, many celebrities have their homes, and it's like ultra elite people, and their houses got burned down completely, and it was like they were on TV and witnessing their house literally burning down, and they are helpless. And like you said, that it is also a part where you need to go through a certain element of that everything is temporary, that one day everything is going to go down. So
Yes.
it's like your asset, your house, your near dear
Mm,
ones, your whatever it is. It's like
mm,
earth or time period, the yuga is of such a nature now that it is going to bring life incidents of such kind which will shock you, which will force you to ask existential questions with yourself,
yes.
that all the
Yes.
things which I built and worked for, and everything I was attached to, and now it is vanishing and destroying in front of my own eyes, and I am pathetic and helpless and insignificant and feeling powerless all the time. And this happens more when your ego is very boosted, because it's for, just imagine that people who are elite, powerful, they have all resources at their disposal, but they are still watching their house burn down and they cannot do anything. So what,
Yes.
this is a
That
big
is
level of powerlessness.
that is another point, because it
Mm.
happened in America, which is like
Ah,
the biggest military, the most resources.
correct.
In spite of that, they were unable to control this fire.
Huh?
But something miraculous happened as well.
Mm,
Paramahansa Yogananda had
mm,
gone to US and he set up his ashram,
mm,
ashram built around a lake,
mm,
and that is located in the region where the Palisades fire was burning. And
mm.
miraculously, the fire burned all around that ashram, did
Ah,
not touch the ashram, but
yeah,
it burnt all the houses around the ashram,
yeah.
which is obviously a miracle. And it also tells us, it gives us an important message
Mm,
that this is the time that You need to focus more on the spiritual parts of your life than on the material part of your life,
Yeah.
because that is what was saved and everything else around it burned
Yeah,
down.
yeah. Everything which was full of blind materialistic approach, it was consumed by fire. So like you said, you are absolutely right, it is a fire outside and fire within. And
Yes.
now, sir, I just want a brief description from your end. Actually, we have discussed this before, but for the viewers who don't know what we are going to discuss now, just a brief introduction of the Yuga cycles, like how it is of 25,800 years, and
Mm.
general cycle where there are descending and ascending cycles and period of transitions. You just comment on that and then we'll proceed.
Yeah, so we there are two halves of the Yuga cycle. One is the descending half when there is a decline in dharma.
Hmm.
Along with the decline in dharma, there is a decline in the conditions of the external environment, physical size, cranial capacities, our lifespans.
Hmm.
And after that decline, we reach the Kaliyuga, which is the current age. And after the Kaliyuga is over, then we begin an ascending cycle when once again all of those parameters that we spoke about, dharma and lifespan and everything else, they start improving and we reach the next golden age. The reason why this makes a lot of sense is because we see this ascending and descending cycle everywhere in all the cycles of time. In the cycle of day and night, there's a gradual decline and a gradual ascent. Cycle of seasons, there's a gradual decline and a gradual ascent. Similarly, in the Yuga cycle also, there's a gradual decline followed by a gradual ascent. And this was mentioned in a lot of ancient Indian texts. For instance, the Jain Kalachakra Tantra,
Hmm.
it talks about a descending cycle called Apasarpini and an ascending cycle called Utsarpini. Aryabhatta also used the same terminology, a descending cycle called Apasarpini, a ascending Utsarpini. The Kashyapa Samhita, exactly same formulation, descending Apasarpini, ascending Utsarpini. So this idea was known in ancient India, it is not new, but it was left out of some of the important texts like the Puranic texts. And so people forgot about it. In the Puranic text, only the descending cycle was described. And so people started thinking, okay, we go from Satyuga to Kaliyuga, and then from Kaliyuga go directly to Satyuga.
Ah.
But that is very illogical if you think about it, because from the lowest state of human consciousness, how can you suddenly jump to the highest state of human consciousness? Everything has to go move in a gradual pattern.
Hmm.
So that is one part.
Hmm.
The second part is during the periods of transition between every yuga, there is supposed to be a time of cleansing called pralaya.
Hmm.
That is when the older civilization kind of collapses and a new foundation. The foundations are laid for a new kind of civilization to emerge.
Hmm.
That is the second part, and the third part are the timelines. If you look at the Manusmriti, it talks about 12,000 year cycle. Mahabharata also talks about 12,000 year cycle. Greeks talk about a 12,000 year cycle. Persians talk about 12,000 year cycle. But in some of the Puranas, that was multiplied by 360 and it became a huge number. So
Hmm.
we have to ignore that number and go with the 12,000 year cycle. Now, this 12,000 year cycle is a half cycle. It's only the descending half because, as we just discussed, we forgot about the ascending cycle. So when you put it together, the total cycle becomes 24,000, 12,000 half and 12,000 ascending, 24,000. Now, these two half cycles are separated by two extended periods of transition. The Greeks used to call it cataclysmus, which means deluge or flood, and ekpyresis, which means conflagration or burning.
Burning.
So the deluge takes place after we reach the golden age.
Hmm.
Then there is a 1,200 year period of transition called cataclysmus or deluge.
Hmm.
That's when the flood happens.
Hmm.
And then after we reach the Kali Yuga, there's another 1,200 year period of transition called ekpyresis,
Hmm.
which is when the world is cleaned by fire.
Hmm.
So this is the overall framework of the Yuga cycle. And we are now going into this period called ekpyresis or cleansing by fire.
Hmm. Okay, sir. So let's talk about the part of human evolution, because here we have seen that and we have accounts of that also, that whether if we read Puranas, or not even that, if we read the Mahabharata or the Bhagavad Purana, there has been discussed several stories of um, people going to different lokas and time dilation is being discussed. And apart from that, there has also been a discussion, not only in the Hindu tradition but also in others, where the humans, it has been described that in the earlier yugas, the humans had different personalities. They were bigger in structure, their height was more, they were more healthy, vital, and their intelligence was high. They were able to function on a higher, much higher scale than us, as compared to what we are as of now. So according to this Yuga cycle, if we have been going through the descending phase, and the descending phase has given, no doubt it has given the loss of dharma in us, the loss of self consciousness in us, but it has also given the loss of mental faculties, intelligence, physical stature, and the general health. So I think that overall evolution that has happened over these yuga periods in the descending phase, do you see that there has been a reason why that happened, that we can correlate it with the yuga cycles, how the human evolution has happened so far?
Yeah, I mean, if you read the Darwinian theory of evolution, everything has increased gradually in a linear manner over the last 2 million years. But when you look at the hard data, you find that that is not the case at all.
Hmm.
I- If you look at the data from the Eastern Mediterranean region, for instance, you find that over the last 12,000 years, our physical size has declined by at least 7 or 8 inches on an average, possibly even more, because what happens is that when you're looking at very large skeletons from the older times, they are generally rejected as anomalous skeletons. But on an average, around 10 to 15% reduction in size has happened over the last 12,000 years,
Hmm.
which goes against the linear pattern of evolution where we constantly become bigger and stronger.
Hmm.
And that is mentioned in the ancient texts. For instance, the story of Raivata, King Raivata, he wants to find a groom for his daughter, and so they go off to the realm of Brahma
Brahma.
on a spacecraft, and there they're listening to a piece of music. And once the music is over, he tells Brahma, "Please tell me who my daughter is going to marry." And Brahma says that by the time that we are listening to this
Hmm.
music piece, 3 yugas are already over. So right
Hmm.
now it's Kaliyuga in Earth. So
Hmm.
you better, sorry, right now it's
Dwapar.
Dwapara,
Hmm.
end of Dwapara Yuga in Earth. So you better go back and give your daughter in marriage to Balarama.
Hmm.
So when they come back to the Earth, they find that the people have shrunk in size. They are
Hmm.
not so energetic anymore. They're not very intelligent anymore. And then they find Balarama, and Balarama is shorter
Hmm.
than Revati,
Hmm.
the daughter of the king, which is very surprising because Balarama is supposed to be a very big and huge warrior. He was the strongest warrior of his time,
Hmm.
and he's smaller than the daughter,
Hmm.
than Revati. And then that obviously is kind of strange. But then when you look at the data from Eastern Mediterranean,
Hmm.
it shows that the females who lived in the golden age or Satyuga were on an average 2 inches higher than the men who lived in the Dwapara Yuga. So the
Hmm.
women of the Satyuga were taller in height than the men of the Dwapara Yuga, and that is based on data collected by Mr. J. Angel of the Smithsonian University. So this is valid mainstream data that I am referring to.
Hmm.
So these stories are getting validated by the new scientific findings, and anybody who says that Yuva cycle is not backed up by physical anthropological data,
Hmm.
he hasn't really looked into the data very carefully.
Hmm.
Same kind of data is also there for Northern Europe, this
Hmm.
decline of physical size.
Hmm. And I think you have also mentioned that in the archaeological excavations of early Holocene period, they found some human skeletons who means which were much more disease free and healthy and more big in I'll say physical stature than us. So that has been also discussed. You discussed that in your book, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
So what they found is that in the let's say 12,000 years back, when we just ended the previous Satyug, they found that the skeletons, there's no sign of diseases in the skeletons. But
Hmm.
as time goes on and we go into this period known as the Holocene period, which is the descending cycle,
Hmm.
there are more and more signs of diseases like parasital infections, earthworm, worm infections, dental decay, all of that starts showing up in the skeletons, but there were no diseases around 12,000 years back.
Hmm.
Similarly, we spoke about the bone structures. Bone structures were much stronger and much more athletic than the structures now. And there was no sign of malnourishment. The skeletons, when we look at 12,000 years back, everybody seems to have been very well fed. There was no food shortages. But as we go down this cycle over the last 12,000 years, more and more signs of malnourishment comes up. So this is what the ancients were telling us, that in the Satyuga there is enough food for everybody. Everybody leads disease-free long lives, and now it's turning out to be true that we have got more and more diseases have come up throughout the descending cycle.
Hmm. And lifespan also, I think, was really big. I mean, so, right now in Kaliyuga, average life expectancy is around 80 years. And
Mhm.
it has been discussed in Puranas and other scriptures that previously people used to live for many centuries. Like average lifespan was around 400-500 years in Satyuga.
Yeah.
It decreased gradually as the yugas descended. But if it was possible at that time, because some people think that it's like it is all fallacy, it is all myth, and it was not possible, you are just talking, you don't know what you are talking about. So I just want to take your I want your take on this, that these are not just mere conspiracies or mere figments or imaginations, these are true. So there
Yeah.
has been a lot of evidence, ample evidence, that people have been in a state of good health as well as good well-being, as well as which is ultimately contributing to their extended life spans.
Exactly, because if you look at the Manusmriti says that in the Satyug, people used to live for 400 years, and with Treta, 300 years, Dwapara, 200 years, and in the Kali Yuga is 100 years. Now, in the Kali Yuga, we are close to the average benchmark of 100 years. Right now, it's around 80 years. But if you go to a place like Okinawa in Japan,
Hmm.
there the average lifespan is constantly hitting 100 years.
Hmm.
And if you look at what they're doing differently, it turns out that they're leading a very traditional life. They're eating a lot of vegetables, they're doing a lot of exercises, they have a purpose in their lives, and so on. They have very close family connections and friendship bonds. So all of that is contributing to the fact that people in Okinawa are already living till 100. And whereas people in other parts of the world who live in this very stressful existence and eat all of
Yeah.
this food, junk food, they are getting more diseases, and they're living less amount of time. So that could be one of the reasons why we haven't yet touched the Kali Yuga average of 100 years. But one of the problems with determining the ages in the higher egos is that you can't look at a skeleton and figure out how
Hmm.
long it had lived.
Correct.
So you can measure the length of the skeleton, you can measure the cranial volume and all the other things, but you don't know how long person has lived. So we have to rely on data. Now, if you look at the data around, let's say, 3000 BC, which was the beginning of the Kali Yuga, the Egyptian pharaohs used to live till 100 years.
Hmm.
So that was the average lifespan at the beginning of the Kali Yuga.
Hmm.
Now, at around 700, 600 BCE, when we had come to the end of the descending Kali Yuga, we find that in Egypt, the lifespan had come down to around 50 years.
Hmm.
And around the same time, the Romans were living till around 45 years.
Hmm.
So lifespan had gradually declined from around 100 years to around 50 or 45 years at around 700, 600 BCE,
Hmm.
which is the point of transition between the descending and the ascending Kali Yuga.
Hmm.
And in the ascending Kali Yuga, which starts at around 700 BC, and this corresponds to what we now know as the Iron Age civilizations, because the Iron Age cultures all over the world, they started at around 700 BC. So at the beginning of the current ascending Kali Yuga, the ages had come down to around 45, 50 years. That was the bare minimum.
Hmm.
And now, over the last 2000 years, lifespan has actually been gradually increasing. And it was not because of the modern medicines or
Hmm.
modern vaccines or pharmaceutical. No, it was going on constantly. Even during the so called medieval or dark ages,
Hmm.
it seems that in England, they have record for this increase from between 1200 to around 600 AD. Lifespan had increased from around 60 years to 72 years, average lifespan.
Hmm.
So there was a gradual increase throughout that period, which means that this has nothing to do with the living conditions or with the philosophies or medical inventions. This is something that happens naturally in the course of our evolution through the Yuga cycle.
Hmm.
And so now it has gradually increased back to 80 years, and it's not going to come down anymore anytime soon, because now we are on that upward curve of lifespan. And so as we cross over the Kali Yuga, you move over to the Dwapara, is going to go to 200. There's
Hmm.
nothing is going to stop it from
Hmm.
going back again to
Hmm.
40 or 50 years.
Hmm.
So a lot of people think that, not a lot of people, some people say that it should come down to 30 years, and that part is already over.
Yeah.
We have already touched the bottom of
Yes.
the lifespan figure at around 45 years,
mm,
and that was around 600, 700 BCE. That was the time we reached the bottom of that curve.
mm,
And now, for the ascending Kali Yuga, the lifespan has been increasing, and we're going to increase more. It's going to increase even more
mm,
as we come out of the cycle.
mm. No, actually, people have this misconception that somewhere it is written, I think in Bhagavad Purana, Ved Vyas wrote that in Kaliyuga, means near the end of Kaliyuga, the maximum lifespan will be around 20 to 30 years of age. And many things have been written in that case. I'm not saying that they are not true, because they are true. We have witnessed most of them, and we are witnessing most of them as of now. Climate change is one of them, the loss of dharma is another. But this fact that you mentioned, that we have went through that phase of low life expectancy in the early ages or early civilization, when the iron age began, and now since after and it was actually the descending cycle of Kali Yuga, like you told. And the
Mm,
moment we started the ascending cycle, which started from 676 BC, actually, according to you. So from then on, we have witnessed the gradual increase, and particularly in the 18th and 19th century onwards, it has gradually increased, and which is going to actually increase in the upcoming time. So that is one misconception which we need to
and
state.
right, and since our lifespan have been declining throughout the descending Kali Yuga and has been increasing throughout the ascending Kali Yuga, it means it used to be much higher in the higher
Correct,
ages. So
correct,
Satyuga must
correct,
have been much higher,
correct.
and it's going to become much higher going forward because it's a U-shaped curve.
Yes, yes.
So there's no basis for us to claim that life cycles couldn't have been higher in the higher ages. In fact, the curve itself shows us that we have the information is based on facts, and this is not only the Puranas. Even if you go back to the New Testament, the Bible,
Mm-hmm.
there they say that some of their patriarchs like Noah and his children, they used to live till 900 years,
Mm-hmm.
and then it gradually kept on coming down. And in the descending Kaliyuga, it reached to around 100, 150 years, the middle of the descending Kaliyuga. And after that, they don't have the data.
Mm-hmm.
So that is in sync with the data that we have in other cultures, this gradual decline in lifespan. It's there.
And I think that because we are talking about evolution, so genetic mutation plays a very vital role there. So I think there could be a correlation that as we decline in the Yuga cycle, and or as we ascend respectively, the genetic mutation might be of such a nature that it actually supports the actual body structure, where we are able to adapt with the surrounding environment and live long, and we are more strong and vital and have good, I'll say, physical stretchers. So or we descend, then it goes down. So there you think that also has been it can be a criteria.
Yeah. It's basically genetic mutations which drives this whole thing
Hmm.
because in the descending cycle, what scientists have found is that over the last few thousand years, we are accumulating more and more harmful genetic mutations.
Hmm.
And because we have been accumulating these harmful genetic mutations, that not only resulted in a decline in our physical size, but also our cranial volume.
Yes.
Our cranial volume is a measure of our intelligence.
Hmm.
And by the way, cranial volume is declining even now.
Hmm.
Uh, Although our lifespan has started increasing in the ascending Kali Yuga, even our physical size started increasing a little bit in the ascending Kali Yuga. Cranial volume hasn't stopped
Declining.
shrinking.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's kept on declining throughout the Kali Yuga, and that is because cranial volume is a measure of our intelligence and
Hmm.
a lot of other subtle abilities. And
Hmm.
those subtle abilities and the intelligence and the higher level of consciousness have not come back to us because we're still in the Kali Yuga.
Hmm.
So from the consciousness point of view or the mental point of view, the memory point of view, our memories are so limited. We can't even remember our passwords, but
Hmm.
our ancestors used to remember all of this text, and they used
Yes.
to transfer it orally. There was no
Yes.
writing system, 2,000 years ago.
Hmm.
Everything was transmitted orally,
Hmm.
and today we can't remember a single phone number. So
Hmm.
that is the kind of reduction in our memory which has happened.
Hmm.
And if you look at you talk to the Hopi, they'll say that in the higher ages of the first world, our ancestors used to talk with the animals through telepathy.
Yes. Yes.
Now, so obviously that's a kind of ability we don't have anymore.
Hmm.
Telepathy, intuition, ability to see the future. All of these subtle abilities are no longer there with us.
Hmm. So does it mean that the cranial capacity it has continuously been declining since the descension of the Yuga cycle, but cranial capacity, like you said, reflects our intelligence, but it also does it play a role in deciding the level of self awareness or consciousness within a person?
Of course, because the greater your capability of judgment, the greater your capability to distinguish between what is true and what is false,
Hmm.
the better you will be able to improve yourself, to improve your, elevate your consciousness.
Hmm.
Because a person who cannot discriminate between what is true and what is false, or what serves his purpose and what doesn't serve his purpose, what serves the welfare of the world and what doesn't serve the welfare of the world, unless you can make these distinctions, you might get, pulled downwards, in the evolution of our consciousness.
Hmm.
So a person whose discrimination and judgment is more refined, he can move upwards in his state of awareness. So obviously the intelligence plays a very important role from that aspect to help us in the evolution of our consciousness. And there could be many other things, even memory. If your memory is declining, then you don't always remember all the the learnings that you have
Hmm.
gathered
Yes.
over time. So all of that plays a role in your
I think
evolution.
when you say memory, we should also keep in mind that it is not just the logical ability to remember things, but it also means to have good discernment about taking decisions in life.
Yeah,
I think you
yeah.
are pointing to that.
Yeah, the judgment, the ability to discriminate between what is good and what is bad. That is the
Hmm.
primary thing. And
Hmm.
secondly, even memory also helps you to, correlate many things together. Which if you keep forgetting everything, then you might have to relearn the same thing over and over again.
Hmm.
So
So
yeah.
do you expect that our cranial volumes are going to increase or not?
Yeah, of course, it should increase now that we have reached the end of the Kali Yuga. I mean,
Hmm.
I think in the next decade or two, you might see that our cranial capacities have already started increasing.
Hmm.
Uh, and I certainly expect that to happen, that in the next couple of decades, we'll find that our cranial capacities are increasing, our memories are increasing, our capabilities of judgment are increasing, and we're becoming much more aware,
Hmm.
not only of outside world but also of the inner world.
Hmm. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right about that. But one more thing, I have this doubt that we are also impacted by our surroundings a lot. And last time when we discussed, we talked about the AGN cycle, the active galactic nucleus, and its impact on the level of human awareness and consciousness, as well as the atmosphere of the earth. So I just want your take on that. You discussed about the AGN. Please just comment on that. What is AGN and where we are in that phase right now, the on phase or off phase? And second, do you think that that is also going to play a very vital role in building or enhancing our cranial volumes, which in turn give us more ability to become more self-aware, more adaptable to gaining easy knowledge and gaining access to those abilities which were not available to us before, like you said, the telepathy or the capability to become more technologically advanced, where we are able to utilize the resources of the planet or the solar system or the galaxy. So what is your take on that?
Yeah. So see, at the center of our galaxy, there's this a black hole. The physicists, they refer to it as a black hole, but the ancient Indians, the Vedic sages, they refer to it as Brahma. Because
Hmm.
Brahma is unformed creative principle. Brahma is pure consciousness.
Hmm.
The black hole at the center of our galaxy is essentially nothing but pure consciousness. That's why we are unable to see what exactly is inside that black hole.
Hmm.
And it is this consciousness which uh, radiates the light that illuminates our mind. So
Hmm.
what happens is that the black hole sometimes becomes inactive. That
Hmm.
is when the light from the black hole does not reach us to the same extent as it does before. And that's the time we are in the descending cycle. The light from the black hole has now switched off. It has gone into the switch off phase of its aging cycle. That was what happened over the entire descending cycle
Hmm.
till around 2000 years ago.
Hmm.
And so when the light from the galactic center doesn't reach us anymore, what happens is that there are many harmful genetic mutations which happen in our body. These harmful genetic mutations are because of the cosmic rays that come in, the solar UV rays, the cosmic UV rays, the background radiation on our planet, that basically create the harmful genetic mutations. And so our physical size, cranial capacity, everything keeps on reducing. But then the black hole enters into a startup phase. This is a very small phase, and this covers only the ascending Evo cycle. In the startup phase, the black hole starts radiating some amount of X-rays. It
Hmm.
doesn't become fully active, but it is partially active.
Hmm.
So that is the phase that we have been living through in the last 2000 years, and we are still now in that phase.
Hmm.
And what happens in this phase is that there's a small increase in our lifespan. So our lifespan has increased over the last 2000 years slightly. There's a slight increase in our physical size, but our cranial capacity is still very small.
Hmm.
And now the black hole is going to enter into its active phase.
Hmm.
When the black hole becomes enters into its active phase, it becomes highly radiant. It starts emitting huge amounts of radiation at all the electromagnetic frequencies. And then the nucleus, which contains the black hole in its center, it becomes extremely luminous.
Hmm.
It becomes like it emits more light than all the stars of the galaxy put together,
Hmm.
4 to 5 times the light of the galaxy put together.
Hmm.
And this is the structure that the ancients called as the central sun. The Buddhists refer to a central sun,
Hmm.
uh, or the sun of wisdom, which emits intellectual light. And the Chaldeans also spoke of a hypercosmic sun, which is located beyond the big stars and which conducts our sun. They all spoke about the sun of wisdom, which emits intellectual light. This sun of wisdom is nothing but the nucleus at the center of our galaxy,
Hmm.
because our solar system is really a microcosm of the galaxy. Just as in the galaxy you have at the center, you have the central sun and everything is revolving around it. Similarly, in our solar system, we have a sun at the center, everything is revolving around it. That is why the ancients also used to say that our sun is a reflection of Brahma.
Hmm.
Surya is
Yeah.
a reflection of Brahma.
Yes.
There's a saying in Hindi,
Hmm.
that in Sanskrit, that
Hmm.
Surya is a reflection of Brahma. That's because Surya occupies the same position that Brahma occupies in the galaxy.
Hmm.
Now, in the ascending cycle, when the black hole is going to become active and is going to send out all of this high frequency radiation, is going to start giving us positive genetic mutations.
Hmm.
So that as soon as we get those positive genetic mutations, everything is going to change.
Hmm.
Our physical size is just going to go up very rapidly. Our lifespan is going to increase rapidly. Our cranial capacities are going to increase rapidly.
Hmm.
And the other thing that the high frequency radiations do is that they kill off disease causing germs.
Yes.
So there's not going to be all of these diseases that we
Hmm.
see around us today.
Hmm.
So, so together they will. So this radiation is the key.
It,
The
it
radiation
acts
from the
it acts as a protective shield.
yeah,
Hmm.
that is the divine light. That is
Hmm.
the light of divine light which propels us in the ascending cycle. And as long as we don't have the divine light, we are essentially living in darkness. We really don't. We are really living in darkness. That is
Yes.
why Kaliyuga is said to be the age of darkness. Why? Now we have the sun, but this sun is not the sun of wisdom. This is not the sign of divine light. We don't have the divine light today. And once that light comes on, once the central sun becomes visible to us, when the black hole becomes active, then we will know what we have been missing. Then we will know that, okay, we were actually sleeping, now we are waking
Yes.
up to our full potential.
Yeah.
And that is also going to be the time when, in all likelihood, we are going to reestablish our connection to our wider cosmic family, by which I mean the gods, the sages, and all the other interdimensional beings. Like in our text, we hear
Hmm.
about the Gandharvas, the Apsaras, the Yakshas.
Yes.
If you read the Mahabharata, the Pandavas were regularly interacting with the Gandharvas,
Yes, actually.
right? They even fought some battles against the Gandharvas.
Yes.
Then the then the Yaksha asked a set of questions to Yudhishthir,
Hmm.
and then the Apsaras were there, and then Bhima got pulled into the land of the Nagas,
Hmm.
and there They revived Bhima. Arjuna got pulled into the land of Nagas and he married a Naga daughter,
Yes.
right? I think, or what was her name? I forgot her name. So, so they were interacting with all of these interdimensional beings. And today we don't see any of them. So they have now passed into mythology. So we are
Hmm.
saying that, oh, maybe there was some kind of human tribe or
Hmm.
this tribe. Or no, they never said they're human tribes. They always said that they're very powerful, very intelligent interdimensional beings, and that humans were actually incapable of fighting against them.
Yes.
For instance, there is this story where Duryodhana got into a fight with the Gandharvas,
Hmm.
and then Arjuna had to actually go and save them
Hmm.
because they were incapable of fighting against the Gandharvas.
Hmm.
So these kind of interdimensional beings are there in the stories of all ancient cultures. In Europe, they're actually called elves and fairies and dwarfs, and other cultures have different names for that. The Hopi call them kachinas, which
Hmm.
means spirit beings.
Hmm.
We have lost the connection with the spirit beings. And then the sages, the sages used to be there, the Saptarishis used to be there, so many other kinds of sages used to be there, and
Hmm.
the gods, of course. I mean, the gods were always involved in the higher ages.
Hmm.
We don't see them or interact with them anymore.
Hmm.
So that's going to be a really big change. This change in our reality, paradigm that we live in, that we are the only inhabitants of Earth, we are the
Hmm.
only inhabitants of the entire universe. That's
Hmm.
what
Yes.
so many people believe.
Hmm.
That thing is going to be destroyed.
Hmm.
And what we'll see is that there are many other kinds of cosmic beings, and it's quite possible that the body cycle of all of these cosmic beings, the gods and the sages, is actually regulated by the central sun, by the nucleus of the galaxy.
Hmm.
Because when that becomes active, it's quite possible that is when they also have the beginning of their day. So
Ah.
their day starts with the ascending cycle, and
Hmm.
their day ends
With the
when we
descending cycle.
they basically in the descending cycle is the evening, and when we reach the
Ah.
Kaliyuga, the descending and the ascending Kaliyuga, that's their night time. So
Hmm.
that is when they're kind of hibernating or resting, and they're
Yeah.
saying, "No, I'm not going to go and interact with the humans now.
Yeah.
It's anyway Kaliyuga.
Yeah.
They won't understand who we are, what we have to say. Let them
Hmm.
carry on doing what they're doing, and we'll come back again once the ascending cycle is about to begin."
Yeah.
So that is the crucial stage where we are at,
Hmm.
where our reality might undergo a very radical and drastic shift once
Hmm.
we realize we are not the only people on this planet or the solar system or the galaxy.
Hmm. No, that is actually a very interesting point that you made. That in the descending cycle they might not be active, and in the ascending cycle it's like they are waking up again. And like you clarified that it is not just they are not some different types of human tribes. They are entirely, they are not even human species. They are different altogether, different creatures from different locus, as it has been discussed. So I think that yes, because we were so incapable in the descending cycle that we were blindly ignorant, and we didn't had any resources, no mental faculties to understand these intricacies or big things of the world, or the universe or existence in general. So I think that is going to uplift in the gradual upcoming time. As And the key here I think is the self awareness, because the more everything is connected with that, the inner consciousness, the more you are going to develop that, the more you are connected with your being, the more you know that I am pure consciousness, I'm not this body mind, I'm something bigger than this. So then I think you are able to understand the depth or complexities of the universe or the existence itself.
That's true because the descending cycle is about a decline in dharma, and that the reason why that happens is because we move away from soul consciousness to ego consciousness.
Yes.
So our mind is regulated more and more by our egoic thoughts and desires, and less by our atma or our soul. And the ascending cycle is when we reestablish the connection with our or inner divinity, or with our soul. So once that happens, then automatically you become more selfless, because these are the attributes of the soul. What are the attributes of the soul? Attributes of the soul is that it is pure love.
Hmm.
It does not judge.
Hmm.
It is pure love. It is pure compassion. It is selfless. The soul does not want anything in return. So the soul only wants to give out and not seek for profit or power or fame in its endeavors.
mm,
And soul is always truthful. That is a very important part of the soul. That
mm,
truth is the highest virtue. Because without the truth, you are always confused and you're always lost. The soul does not. Uh, the soul values truth above everything else.
mm,
And the ego and the truth, they do not go hand in hand. So you
mm,
can only either have truth or you can have ego. You
mm,
cannot have both.
mm,
So, justice, brotherhood, oneness, compassion, no divisions, unity. These are some of the attributes of the soul.
mm.
So once we go into soul consciousness, we are automatically preparing ourselves for the higher ascending cycle, because all of these are the attributes of the ascending cycle.
Mm. Now, I think that, as like you mentioned, that we are going to uh, see the transition phase now, because the ascending cycle also is going to complete, and the transition starts for 1200 years, which is going to start from 20th March 2025 onwards for next 1200 years. So, one thing which I want to clarify regarding transition periods is that whether transition periods from one yuga to the next, because after the Kaliyuga completes, along with the 1200-year transition of Ekpyresis that you mentioned, the next will be the Dwapar Yuga, ascending phase of Dwapar Yuga that will start. So during this phase of transition, whether transition period means some mass extinction event, some big cosmic scale event which is happening, or it is not of that proportion, it is lesser in proportion, it only shows the collapse of the existing civilizations, and which was necessary because without collapse we could not have moved further or changed, and the proportion is less. So what do you think about that? Because we have went through mass extinction events also, like dinosaurs were killed in mass extinction event. So whether this is a mass extinction kind of stuff, or it is something lesser in proportion.
No, the mass extinction events happen at a end of a day and night of Brahma. So
Hmm.
we know that there is a bigger cycle. So the day and night of Brahma is of 26 million years duration, because this is the Yuga cycle is around 26,000 years duration,
Yes,
right?
yes, yes.
So if you multiply by 1,000, because the day and night of Brahma is 1,000 times more than the Yuga cycle, then you have a 26 million year cycle as the day and night of Brahma.
Hmm.
And what scientists have found is that every 26 million years, there is a mass extinction of species on Earth,
Hmm.
which shows that the whole concept of day and night of Brahma is also validated by our scientific findings.
Hmm.
So both the cycles are genuine cycles which are backed up by scientific data.
Hmm.
So the extinction events that have happened in the past, and there have been many mass extinction events every 26 million years, that happens at the end of a day of Brahma. But we are nowhere close to the end of a day of Brahma. Our day of Brahma has just started around 2 million years back.
Ah.
So we're pretty much safe as far as mass extinction events are concerned.
Hmm.
So we are going into a time of transition between yugas.
Hmm.
So what we are going to expect is that the materialistic paradigm that we live in, the materialistic civilization, that will collapse,
Hmm.
and that will collapse slowly over a period of time.
Hmm.
But that doesn't mean that every person living on earth is not going to die.
Hmm.
There's going to be a lot of survivors from every culture, those who purify their consciousness, those who make themselves eligible for the higher yuga, they'll be saved and they will move forward, because that is what all the Puranas also say, that after Kalki comes,
Hmm.
by the virtue of his energy,
Hmm.
is going to defeat or kill all the evildoers.
Hmm.
And the minds of those people who survive, their minds will become pure as crystal. And
Hmm.
these people whose minds are purified by the energies of that period, they are going to become the foundational race of
Hmm.
the next cycle.
Hmm.
So there's no question of a mass extinction, but yes, there are going to be human casualties. That is a fact, and that's because the entire 8 billion population of the Earth cannot go into the ascending cycle. Many of these people are not ready for the high levels of energy and the high levels of consciousness
Hmm.
that will be a part of the ascending cycle.
Hmm.
Only those who are ready, those who make themselves ready, they're the ones who will go forward into the next cycle. So
Hmm.
who those are is anybody's guess.
Hmm.
And what I expect is that even though the entire transition period is 1200 years, what I have mentioned in my book is that by 2040, large part of this collapse
Hmm.
is likely to be over. And after that, it's going to be rebuilding,
Hmm.
establishing the new societies, the new ideologies, the new wisdom will be given. Interdimensional doorways will open up. The gods and the sages will come in and give the wisdom. And so small ashram-like societies will probably be formed in different parts of the world.
Hmm.
And these small ashram-like societies will then evolve into gradually they'll form the basis of the ascending cycle after 1200 years. So it's not going to be like a lot of destruction over 1200 years. Not at all. It's whatever happens, I think, is going to happen in the next 15 years,
Hmm.
the destruction part.
Hmm.
And after that is just going to be a gradual process of rebuilding. So
Hmm.
we need to be very careful about this period that we are
Yeah.
living in,
Yeah.
because the changes will come very quickly now.
What kind of changes do you expect? What kind of things we are going to see highly likely? Like you mentioned, one of the events that we have witnessed, the LA fires, like you said. Do you think that such natural calamities can be seen more often, and
See,
any other events apart from this?
See, what is happening at an energetic level is that as the black hole is going to become active, it is sending out very high frequency vibrations towards us.
Hmm.
And anything that is not in resonance with these vibrations, anything that is based on the Kaliyuga energies, anything that is based on greed or selfishness or lack of love, or
Hmm.
that is based on exploitation or oppression or divisions and hatred, anything that is based on those dense energies of the Kali Yuga is going to collapse.
Hmm.
It's not going to survive. So, but then what is the mechanism by which this collapse will happen? It will happen through various means. It could happen simply because there's an internal conflict within organizations. There
Hmm.
could be disclosures, a lot of disclosures are happening.
Hmm.
It could be revolutions happening or
Hmm.
civil unrest, which
Hmm.
is tearing down structures which are no longer serving the people.
Hmm.
And it could also be natural, it could be wars between nations. It
Hmm.
could also be natural catastrophes like fire or
Hmm.
floods.
Hmm.
Floods are another important part
Ah.
because as these high frequency radiations are coming in, they
Hmm.
are heating up the Earth's core and mantle, and the ocean water is also getting heated up. So
Hmm.
that is going to cause more flooding events, and we've been seeing those, right? We've been
Hmm.
seeing these
Yes.
floods in Egypt and Arabia. There was snowfall, and just I think at the beginning of January there was a massive flood in Mecca. Around the same time, when the wildfires started in LA,
Hmm.
there was this huge flooding event in
Yes,
Mecca,
yes, yes,
eh,
yes, yes, and
which is
it is a desert area. We
it
never
is a
see
desert area.
we never see even rainfall
Yeah,
there. There are flood is happening.
exactly. Dubai floods happened in 2024.
Yes, yes.
So some very very unusual events are happening in terms of flood as well as fires.
Hmm.
So these are the kind of events which will kind of break down these older structures. It will happen gradually over the next few years, and we'll be forced to introspect as to, like you said at the beginning of our conversation, that we have to ask the big questions: that
Hmm.
who are we? What are we doing in this planet?
Hmm.
Why have I come here? What is my purpose in life?
Yes.
These are the big existential questions you have to start asking yourself, and then you have to find the willpower within yourself, the desire and the willpower within yourself to find your own soul purpose. What is my purpose on this planet? And start fulfilling that purpose.
Hmm.
As soon as every person, as soon as he moves away from setting this materialistic goals, bank balance, as he moves away from bank balance towards karmic balance, as you start making that shift, then immediately what happens is that the nature of society itself begins to undergo a gradual shift. Like last time we spoke about this focus on stock markets and GDP.
Correct.
That is not the focus for the higher ages.
No, no.
Nobody, Ved Vyas never spoke about stock market
Yeah,
performance, right?
yeah.
So they were, all the ancient sages were talking about other things. So
Hmm.
those are the things to which we
Hmm.
need to divert our attention, because those are not empty tales, and
Hmm.
those are not empty wisdom.
Hmm.
It's just because we have been passing through a Kali Yuga that
Hmm.
these important messages have lost their importance. We
Hmm.
have started neglecting them. We have started thinking that the technological and material progress are the only foundations of human civilization, and this is how things are going to continue indefinitely.
Hmm.
But they're not going to continue indefinitely, and that is going to come as a shock to a lot of people, because
Hmm.
we've been indoctrinated with that messaging right from our childhood. That is the messaging that we have received, that you have to grow up and you have to own a car and a big house, and you have
Correct.
have foreign vacations, and that has been going on everywhere across all cultures, and that indoctrination has to change in a very short period of time. So that's going to create a lot of anxiety and suffering within people.
Hmm. No, I think that one more thing which I just I thought of this now, because it has been written in Puranas that when Kaliyug actually manifested in a form of a human and asked permission from Parikshit to enter into his kingdom, he gave him 5 places to enter. And I think that that is what Kaliyuga is: the gold and the money, number one. Gambling, where gambling is done, where illicit sex is done, alcohol, where people drink alcohol, and then meat and slaughter. And slaughter, I think, violence also. Violence. So these are the 5 places. If we look at the descending phase, so far, what we have been doing in the human history so far is being engrossed in these 5 places only. We are engrossed in gold and money, illicit sex, alcohol, gambling, and meat and slaughter and violence. That is all what we have done so far. So, if Kaliyuga is this only, it means the basic innate animalistic elements of the human being, they are going to go down. And for them to go down, and upliftment of the inner consciousness, which actually prepares you for the upcoming yugas, you need self awareness. And self awareness cannot happen, I think, until and unless you are not forced by the
Yes.
nature to get rid or get away from these things where you are so much engrossed. So
Yeah.
if you look at, this is one big point, because I'm not saying that everybody's loss is loss. I'm not comparing whether you are elite or whether you are a person who is very poor. I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying one thing, that like the LA fires happened, and they burned down the houses of those big celebrities in Hollywood particularly, and they are very powerful, world famous people, and they have all the resources at their disposal, but still it's like you are helpless, you cannot do anything. So it's like you can see the destruction of the Kali Yuga manifesting around us in these capacities, that it is going to take away the money, take away the gold. And like gambling, stock market is gambling only, you are in a sense. So those things, I think, are going to somewhat get a lot of hampering around. They are going to be hampered,
Yeah.
businesses are going to be hampered, and ultimately it is going to create a lot of economic instability throughout the world. So those issues which where Kaliyug has, it's like which has it has created, if we have to get rid of them, we have to come out of it, we are going to be forced, I think, to see that these things which have been the primary we have given primary importance to them for attaining self happiness, nature will force us to understand that this is not what happiness means. There is no happiness in them. So
Right.
I think you are right there.
Yes, and in fact, during the pandemic itself, a lot of people realized the importance of health and family when they
Hmm.
started staying indoors. They
Hmm.
started giving more importance to their health, eating much more healthy food, and they spent more time with their family. And they realized that money is not the sole aim of life. But the pandemic got over, and once again, people have started going back to their old habits and their old ways.
Hmm.
Similarly, thing is that. There are two ways we can change. One is where we are forced to change, either by nature or by circumstances. The other is we learn from the experiences of others. We learn from history. We learn from wisdom teachings. So that is proactive learning. When we engage in proactive learning, we save ourselves a lot of suffering. But if we don't engage in proactive learning, then we go through our own karmic learning process, which entails suffering. Because without suffering, the ego doesn't get dissolved.
Correct.
So these are the two ways in which we can learn. And as we go along this Kali Yuga cycle towards this transition and endpoints, I think a lot of that learning will come through suffering because people are not learning proactively. No matter, I mean, some people are changing over. I mean, to be positive, I mean, there are a lot of people who are proactively changing, but a lot of people will be forced to change through, unfortunate circumstances, and that is not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, to face some kind of hardship or face some kind of loss, That is not necessarily a hard thing, because in the long run it is pushing you in the right direction.
mm,
Because karma doesn't come only to punish us. Karma also comes to teach us.
mm.
Karma comes here to tell us what is not working, what is not good for you, and which direction you should move. So karma in that sense is the biggest teacher. So that is something that we have to face both individually and collectively, because in the Kali Yuga there has been a lot of collective bad karma. I mean, across the world,
Yeah,
I mean, there has been a lot of
yeah,
collective bad karma, and
correct.
all of that karma has to be resolved now in these final phases. So there's obviously, as we go through that process, we'll face the brunt of our own individual karma as well as the collective karma. So we have to, kind of start thinking about it right now, because a lot of our suffering is mental.
Hmm.
Physically we don't suffer also so much. Physically you can put some ointment, you can have a medicine, and you can basically cure yourself. But
Yeah.
the mental suffering is the biggest suffering that most people go through, and it's because of the mental suffering you find so many villainous putting a bullet to their head,
Yeah.
because it's not the lack of money which because of which they're suffering. So
Yes.
the mental suffering has to be, and the way you can alleviate the mental suffering is through, the spiritual life, which
Hmm.
is tuning into your inner soul vibrations.
Hmm.
And there are ways to do that. You
Hmm.
go away from, the obsessing about your bank balance. That's the first step. You start following the core principle of dharma. The core principle of dharma is that you treat others the same way that you want to be treated,
Yes.
and you don't do to others what you don't want others to do to you. So for instance, if I go out there and a lot of people on the internet who pretend to be protectors of dharma, they're
Hmm.
always insulting and abusing people.
Yes.
That is not dharma. You cannot do something to other people that you don't want other people to do. So you have to keep a control over what you think and what you say and what you do.
Yes.
This is an important principle that we need to follow. And then we need to spend some time every day on some kind of a spiritual practice, whether it is yoga or meditation, or it's nature walk, whether it's chanting or prayer. Something we have to do every day, because we clean our bodies on a regular basis. We take a bath, and we shave and do everything. But what are we doing for our mind? We don't
Hmm.
spend any time cleaning up our mind. And
Correct.
the mind keeps on accumulating a lot of filth over time. What happens is that it drives away all the positive influences from your life. So a
Yes.
filthy mind will drive away the good relationships, the well-meaning people,
Hmm.
and it's going to draw all the negative elements to you.
Yes. Yes.
And then you start falling down the slope, and ultimately you reach a place of despair, a
Hmm.
critical life-changing situation. That is when a lot of people turn around.
Hmm.
So instead of doing that, if you adopt a set of spiritual practices that you practice on a regular basis,
Hmm.
then that will help go a long way.
Hmm.
There's a Tibetan proverb which says that you should meditate 2 hours every day,
Hmm.
unless you are very busy.
Hmm.
In
Wow.
that case, you should meditate for 4 hours.
Wow.
So what that means is that if you can't find even 2 hours to meditate every day, then your mind is already so clogged up with materialistic thoughts that you need 4 hours to clean up that mess.
Hmm.
And then there's also this point that I tell my friends also, that in India, in the West, we speak about a work-life balance, right?
Hmm.
You have some amount of time for work and some amount time for your life.
Hmm.
But in India, there are four pillars, right? It's dharma, artha, kama,
Moksha.
moksha. Yeah. Dharma is your duty. You fulfill whatever your duty is towards your family, towards the society, and everything. Artha is you work for a living, but you don't do anything which is harmful to other people. Karma is you fulfill all your desires and your whatever hobbies, or your interpersonal relationships. You fulfill those desires. You must spend a little bit of time keeping yourself happy.
Hmm.
Otherwise, you can become too serious about life.
Hmm.
And the fourth part is moksha.
Yeah.
So you have to spend a little bit of time on moksha every day. So that was the point I was talking about. We are not spending that time for moksha. We are not even spending time for
Dharma.
karma. For karma, we're
Hmm.
not. We're just doing artha and coming home, watching TV, and going to sleep. I mean, generally speaking.
Hmm.
So we need to balance our lives along those four dimensions. Make sure that we are doing all of them a little bit every day. Because once you start doing that, you will find that you are feeling more relaxed, you are more content, you are not so agitated, and then you can spend some time you can spend some time on yourself, finding out what is my sole purpose, what what is I am good at, what is it I can give to the world, what is
Hmm.
it that the world needs at this particular moment, and
Hmm.
how I can contribute to it, how can I
Hmm.
play my part.
Hmm.
So then you start asking the big questions and finding out how you can play a part in this whole wheel of life,
Hmm.
rather than just, be a mind controlled zombie who's been programmed by society to act in a particular way.
Hmm. No, you are absolutely right, and we need this as of now, particularly if we, like you said, that in the next 15 years we are going to see quite tough times ahead of us, and there are a lot. There are, like you mentioned, there we can expect a lot of economic instability, political instability, people fighting all across the world, and that is happening as of now. Because if you look at this is just one point I just got in my mind. If we look at the leaders as of now of prominent nations, they are of also such a kind of nature or personality which is quite aggressive, quite egoistic, quite power hungry, quite dictatorial in nature. So I think if people of such nature or behavior are rising to prominent power, and they are serving in such prominent position, or like president or prime ministers or whatever, uh, they have that power to lead nations into wars. They have that power to lead nations into chaos, a lot of disorder, a lot of violence, and not just externally like with other nations, but internally also, that they can disrupt a lot of balance which has been there in the internal, I'll say, the nation itself. So these are the signs or significations which we can expect, that yes, we can see and we can uh, predict that the next 15, 20 years, they are not going to be very easy for us, like you said.
Yes. And like political instability, economic instability. So, which is why it's also very important for us to, instead of constantly thinking of improving our standard of living, we should actually think of how can I live with less? How can I utilize less resources? How can I contribute less to the carbon footprint? These are the questions that you need to start asking about your right now. Because let's say there's a stock market crash and all of a sudden, there's a loss of jobs, then how do you survive in those kind of situations? So you
Mm,
need to reduce your carbon footprints, try to live minimally, simple living, high thinking. That
mm,
was the standard adage that our ancestors also used to tell us. That is something that we need to pay more attention to.
mm. No, you are
And we should
absolutely
not
right.
assume that, we should not really assume that our material wealth and our material prosperity is just going to continue in the same pattern it has been over the last few maybe few decades.
Mm,
It's not going to happen like that.
mm. Now this also gives me one question, one because if we talk about transition periods, we are talking about the upcoming time. Have we witnessed certain big transition periods in the past, throughout various cultures, that impacted the world in a big sense? uh, we talk about, like, a story of flood is there in all kind of religions, traditions. In India also, Hindu tradition, in Abrahamic cultures also, the Noah and the ark and the flood story is there. So I think that points out to be some big transition period that might have happened in the past, and right now we are talking about the transition period which is going to be ahead of us. So, do you have any evidences or any theories that you might have researched about, that we have went through some big transition periods in the past?
Yeah, I mean, I have written about it a lot in my book. There's a lot of archaeological and scientific and geological data supporting that we have gone through these kind of transitions. Let's take the most recent one. Right now, for instance, we are in the Iron Age or the ascending Kaliyuga. And before the Iron Age, there were the Bronze Age civilizations all over the world, in Mesopotamia, Egypt, Indus Valley. What happened to those Bronze Age civilizations? They all disappeared in a span of around 300, 400 years between 1200 BC to 800 BC. So all of those Bronze Age cultures disappeared and they were replaced by the Iron Age cultures. Similarly, the Bronze Age cultures came up at around 3500 or 3600 BC. and all the cultures were wiped out between 4000 to 3000. So go through these phases when across the world an entire phase of civilization is replaced by a new one. The emergence of the Bronze Age cultures in 3500 BC was a new emergence. The emergence of the Iron Age cultures in 700 BC was a new emergence, and they correlate to the descending Kaliyuga and the ascending Kaliyuga. So yes, there is a lot of evidence for that, and which is why now that we are ending the Kali Yuga, there's this very real possibility that our civilization is not going to exist in its present form anymore.
Hmm.
The form of our civilization will change. A lot of people will survive, so it's not an extinction event. So please, I don't want to scare people saying that, but the form of the civilization will change, the ideologies will change,
Yes,
the
yes,
ideology will
yes,
change from matter to spirit.
yes.
That is the big shift that is going to take place. And because of that change, as we discussed the last time, the nature of technology itself is going to change. The nature of medicine, the nature of technology, nature of work, all of that is also going to change.
Yeah. So
So that,
the one more thing is that, you discussed that in the Ice Age, after means the from where the flood story comes most prominently, fragment of comets impacted multiple times on Earth, and that created that dissolution of the ice, and then warmer climates came up. So, do you think that since in the last video we discussed that we are going to enter through the torrid stream of comets again,
yeah.
and that plays a very vital role in bringing these transition periods. So this comes out to be a point where we can expect certain like celestial events, comets impacting us and bringing or helping the transition period to move on to the next yuga.
Yeah, the ancients, ancient cultures, they were really, they used to be very scared of comets. Comets
Hmm.
were called the harbingers of doom, the
Hmm.
portents of disaster. They
Hmm.
were said to be the ball of fire flung by a god
Hmm.
to warn humanity.
Hmm.
So comets were responsible for famines and wars and pestilences and the death of kings, revolutions. All of those things were blamed for comets. So every time a comet comes very close to the Earth, the ancients used to be very worried because they knew that this is going to create some kind of changes in our world. Although not all comets have negative effects, some comets do have positive effects, but they always had an effect nevertheless.
Hmm.
So, and then from 2032 and 2036, we pass through the center of the Torrid swarm,
Hmm.
which has a large number of big comets. They're very likely to get activated sometime before that. And when that happens, those comets are going to bring about certain changes. It could be some destructive events. It could be some constructive events, like comets can also provide a lot of water and restore fertility to the
Hmm.
earth.
Hmm.
Comets can bring in new kinds of DNA from other places, and they can seed the earth with new
Yes.
life, new plants, new life forms, new herbs, and which in turn can provide new sources of medicine.
Yes.
They can they bring new minerals also, because comets have a lot of different kind of minerals.
Yes.
So comet impacts can bring in new minerals. So all of that is going to help us build the new set of technologies that we are going to have in the future.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think the 2032 and 2036 passage, that is going to be very intense, because
Hmm.
cometary energies are very powerful. And if comets come very close to the Earth, and that's something that we haven't had for ages. I
Hmm.
mean, all the comets that we see, they go very far away from the
Hmm.
millions of miles away from the Earth. But
Hmm.
if you imagine some comet enter into the Earth's atmosphere, the energy of that comet will be so powerful that is going to create a lot of psychological changes within us. So
Hmm.
it could elevate our consciousness, or it could drive us mad into a frenzy and lead to global wars.
Hmm.
So what kind of effect it has on a person could also depend on his present state of consciousness. A
Correct.
person who is already elevating himself might find the energies very useful for him to raise his vibrations. Whereas a person who is completely engrossed in material pursuits, he might find that it's creating a lot of anxiety and fear within him, and he wants to now go out and fight.
Hmm.
So this period from 2032 to 2036 is the time that I feel is going to be extremely critical for our planet. That is kind of like the do or die kind of a situation, make or
Mm.
break kind of a situation.
Mm.
Till 2032, I think it's going to be a gradual change in terms of geopolitical changes or
Mm.
earth change, geopolitical changes or earth changes. All those changes will be gradual, but from 2032 to 2036 or 2040, that will be a
Major
period of
changes.
major change, a period of churn, which is
Mm.
why we need to start preparing ourselves for it right now.
Yeah, no, no, you are absolutely. And this, I remember because in there is a book on astrology by Varamihir, and he was a great astronomer as well as astrologer. He wrote Brihat Samhita. So in
Yeah.
Brihat Samhita, it's a complete book on mundane astrology. By far, I remember that is the only good book for mundane astrology, and he has devoted an entire section on comets, where he has explained with the past events, and he has actually uh, described various kinds of comets and their different impacts. Not every comet is bad. He has written in that Brihat Samhita that once we saw certain comets, and like if I remember some one, there is a name like Shwet Ketu, and these are different names, but
Mm.
he has written in detailed description that every time we saw some comets and they brought, like you said, death of kings, wars in kingdoms, famines, droughts, diseases, epidemics,
Mm.
and some comets also replenished the energies. They brought up more enhancement of the civilization. So that point that you made, if I correlate it with that Brihat Samhita, that actually fits. And if we are going to see, because we are going to pass through that torrid zone of comets, and then it is obviously highly likely that we are going to be impacted by the comets in that time duration till we are passing through that. So
Mm.
obviously, yes, I think that we are going to be experiencing a lot of major shifts, which is actually going to prepare us externally as well as internally to move forward with respect to our I'll say modern day new age civilization and
Yes.
new approach. So that is my all questions are finished, and we did a great discussion today. The only last thing which I want you to say to our listeners is what suggestion do you give to people? Actually, you have told us that we have to be more focused on a spiritual life, but anything in more in particular that you want to share with the people who are listening here, that what kind of approach we should take if we are going to go through these tough times ahead.
So we already spoke a lot about the spiritual aspects, the need to move from bank balance to karmic balance. We spoke about that, the
Hmm.
need to dissolve the egoic blockages in our mind, because of which we create these divisions between people. We
Hmm.
create these divisions between people in our own
Hmm.
country, between religions, between nations, between races.
Hmm.
All those divisions have to go, because the higher yoga, you cannot have those divisions. You cannot have
Hmm.
a egoic mind. You cannot take a egoic mind to the higher age. So
Hmm.
you have to let go of those divisions. You have to understand that the truth is there across all cultures, across all societies, that every Atma is a reflection of Brahma. Therefore, you cannot treat other people in a demeaning or insulting manner, nor
Hmm.
can you treat them, exploit them, or use them for your own advantage.
Hmm.
So these are the kind of changes that we need to do. We need to balance our life along the four dimensions that we spoke about: dharma, artha, kama, moksha.
Hmm.
We need to adopt spiritual practices that help us,
Hmm.
right? We
Um,
need to move away from the negativity of the Kaliyuga. There's so much social programming that goes on, all the time. There's so much expectations from parents, and there's also peer pressure. A lot
yeah.
of people think that, if I stop doing this, then what will my friends think? Or
Ah,
your your friends are not thinking.
a lot of
Your
FOMO
friends
is
are
going
not
on.
your friends are not thinking about you at all. I can
Yeah,
assure you. Your
yeah,
friends are only thinking about themselves,
themselves.
and they're thinking what others are thinking of them. They're
Mm,
not really thinking about you. So you're basically free to explore your life and
yeah.
do whatever it is that you are feeling drawn to. You have to, follow your inner calling. Whatever, our heart knows the truth. Our heart knows the way. Our
Mm,
mind doesn't. Our mind is confused, but your heart already knows what it is that you have come here for and what it is that you really want to do. And you have to follow that calling. You have to listen to it, and I have to follow whatever it is trying to tell you to do, and not worry about what others are thinking or
Mm.
others are doing, and not worry too much about the consequences also, because the path opens up as you start walking on it.
Yes.
Yeah, as you start walking, the doors will start opening up, and you will be able to see where you're going. But before you start off, you're not going to see the destination. Right? And nobody can see that destination before
Yeah.
starting. So
Yeah.
this is a time you have to listen to your inner calling, and you have to follow your path
Yeah.
and get on a path. It doesn't really matter whether it's
Mm.
perfect or not,
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
long as you're on a path to evolving yourself, raising your vibrations,
Mm.
getting in touch with your inner divinity.
Mm.
Then you're preparing yourself to deal with the challenges that are coming.
Mm.
And ultimately, who is going to go forward, who is really not my concern right
Mm.
now, because
Mm.
we are all immortal beings.
Mm.
We come here
Yeah.
many times, so we have so many incarnations.
Yeah.
Even if we don't make it this time, we'll come back in a higher yuga if we have made ourselves ready for it.
Mm.
So don't worry about, survival should not be in our mind.
Mm.
What should be in our mind is that, am I making myself ready to face the challenges
Yes.
in a calm and collected way, and not become anxious and fearful.
Yeah.
Because once you fall into anxiety or fear, then you lose your way, you can be manipulated, and then everything is lost.
Mm. I think, in addition to this, just because you have made all the points and they were excellent, the only thing I think that we should also be more respectful to the nature. We should be
Yes,
more
yes,
aware that how much we have polluted and depleted and exploited the resources, and we need to be more respectful of that. And also, we should also be quite grateful to the nature itself and the God, that the life which we have got, because most people, they are not grateful to the life that we have, that they have been given. They always complain that this is
yes,
something
yes,
which I don't have. You are not appreciating what you have right now. So appreciate
exactly.
what you have, appreciate it, because life is for living, and you live in the present. You don't live in the past, you don't live in the future, you live in the now, live in the
Yes,
present, and appreciate what you have right now, instead of worrying in anxiety about the future or being depressed about the past. So the gratefulness should be coming, appreciation towards the life should be coming, and appreciation towards the resources, the beauty around you should be coming. Then only I think you will be seeing, because see, I think that spiritual evolution can only happen when you see that it is there around you. The only thing was that your perception was flawed, you were not able to see. Now your eyes are opening up, and now you are able to see the same world with a different lens, with a more wide, broad approach, which is bringing you a more sense of clarity, more sense of happiness, because the same world can give you suffering and the same world can give you happiness. The only thing is in the sense of perception that we have. If we have an attitude where we complain all the time, where we are living in FOMO, where we are living and worried about too much uh, pressures of the society, obviously we are going to be under a lot of stress and meaninglessness. But the moment we appreciate ourselves, the beauty around us, the life that we have been given, then I think that we can see the beauty in the same existence which we complain all the time.
that's true. And this lack of contentment is so pervasive, because when people start off their jobs, they're thinking that if only I get a job, I'll be happy.
Hmm.
But that never ends there. It keeps on. Now you have bigger house and bigger car, and the desire keeps on increasing. The desire
Ah,
never goes down.
yeah.
And no matter how much you have, you're never really happy. So
Correct.
contentment is a state of mind. You can be perfectly content with whatever little you have, or you can be absolutely discontent no matter how much you have. It
Yes.
is a state of mind. It is a
Yes.
state of mind. Whatever you have right now, you
Hmm.
can be perfectly content with that. And
Yes.
if you're not content with that, then the chances are that whatever you get in future, you'll never be content.
Yes.
So
Yes.
try to develop contentment with whatever you have right now. That
Yes.
is a very important part of
Yes.
our existence.
Yes. And I think that until unless you are not content, you can never be happy. You can never be happy, because if you have even the limited of the things which people live by, and if you're content, you will see that I have seen people who are under utter poverty with utter bliss. Because there are many bhaktas, there are many devotees who don't have anything. They are just reciting the name of the god and they are in utter bliss. And people who are millionaires or billionaires, and they are always complaining about the life and a lot of tension and everything, and they don't have any contentment whatsoever. So it means that money and the material accomplishments don't act as a parameter to give happiness to us. We think that, but it is not that. Because even if you have the basic necessities to live by with self respect and dignity, I think then you should move forward with your spiritual goal. Because that is the ultimate purpose for which you have been given this life. It's not just to accumulate wealth and be powerful and all glorious and everything. It is to enjoy, to live, to explore, and to see the world with utter bliss with which it is created. The only thing is that if you look in that sense, if you're not able to look in that sense, you will never see that. You will always see the misery around us. So if people are able to go, and one more thing, like you pointed out, that that upcoming times are going to snatch away those things forcefully. If you are going to be engrossed too much in materialism, it's going to force you by destroying those things somehow, on an individualistic scale, on a collective scale, on a bigger scale, whatever. But and that is what we have been seeing, like you said, in terms of catastrophes or fires or political instability, people losing money, businesses, whatever, and we are going to see that. But if there is a bigger lesson behind it, like you said, then it means that we have to focus our attention, give our attention to ourselves, the spiritual awakening within us, because that is how, which I think we will be prepared, and we will be moving towards a better path, to peace, to happiness, to contentment, to actually why life has been given to us.
Exactly. I mean, that is the whole. Our planet is basically a school for the evolution of consciousness. We come here only for a short time to learn certain lessons, to clean the mind of the egoic desires and the bad habits, to reconnect with our divine self, and then we go back to our home in the stars, to our Pitriloka or to Swargaloka, wherever it is that we go. And then after some time, when it is again time for us to learn our next set of lessons, again we come back to school.
Correct.
So our planet is like a school. So as long as we're in the school, we should spend some time learning the lessons for which we have come here. Otherwise, we'll go back there and they'll ask you, what did you learn? And they'll say, I wasted my whole time running after money and complaining about those people. And they'll say, well, you haven't actually done a good job. So you have to go back again now.
Yeah.
So the way you can cut short this cycle of samsara is by spending some time, in your every incarnation to learn some certain lessons, let go of those very strong egoic, selfish desires and the bad habits, so that you are making continual progress. That is the reason why we are here. We're not come here to establish empires and to become millionaires. We come here to become millionaires of our soul, not millionaires in terms of money. So these are the basic lessons which it's there in all our texts, it's there in every tradition, but we forget in the Kaliyuga because our school system is such that all of that basically flies out of the window. We are brought up with the Darwinian paradigm, and we are given the materialistic education and the materialistic training, and then you have to spend so much time unlearning all those things that you learned in school, and relearning the new the new teachings and the new messages, real objective of our incarnation. So that is the problem with the Kali Yuga. You don't get the wisdom upfront. You get the wisdom in course of life as you go along.
Thanks for all this discussion, sir. It was great. I can talk to you for hours, but I think we have run out of time, and you are also quite busy. So I hope that what we discussed today, it would benefit a lot of people, and people who are listening to this, watching this. I hope that you liked our discussion, our conversation. If so. You can, like I said, you can watch the other discussion which we had with Mr. Mishra before. So we have reached this end, and I will bring him again because there are many other topics we will have in mind. Till then, appreciate all your wishes, and hope that you like this video. If you are new to the channel, subscribe and comment and share with as much people as possible. Thanks a lot. Have a nice day. Bye, sir.
Thank you, Abhijeet.